on, let's see, Unit 2, it's lesson 6, cause and effect. So once again, something that we saw in language arts that's applicable to our studies and our efforts in social studies. Our final lesson here for Unit 2 will be interpret timelines. So we'll get back into something sort of more related to social studies directly, or at least a new, skill set that we haven't really looked at yet. So I'll open up our cause and effect lesson here. And as it says, by the time we complete the lesson, well, it's taken its time to load. Maybe my internet connection is slow today. I might have to reload it. Let's see here. Oh, let me try that again. All right. Okay, yeah, here we go, finally. So by the time you complete this lesson, you'll be able to identify causes and effects and demonstrate understanding of connections between events, which is really important for the social studies side of it and history, right? Sort of that knowing what the, threading these events together, one from the next, sort of thinking about the long-term picture here. Okay, and our audio today.
A cause is an action or occurrence that makes another event happen. Sometimes causes will be directly stated in text. At times, however, authors may imply the causes of certain events or occurrences. An effect is something that happens as a result of a cause. Without the cause, the resultant effect might never have occurred. A single cause often produces more than one effect. Similarly, multiple causes can work together to produce a single effect. By identifying causes and effects in social studies texts, you can better understand the connections among events and more fully comprehend what you read. As with other areas of the GED test, understanding cause and effect questions will test your ability to interpret data at various depth of knowledge levels through the use of complex reading and thinking skills.
Yeah, so in some form or another, you'll probably encounter that in the GED test as part of those skill sets, along with the sequencing and whether it's the map skills or the tables and things like that. It all kind of rolls in together. All right, so I'll read this one off here, and then I'll start handing it off to you guys to read some of the questions and everything. Okay, so during the era of the American Revolution, Northern and Southern states were united behind the common goal of gaining independence from Britain. However, as time went by, differences between the two regions grew pronounced. With the beginning of the 1800s, the South remained primarily agricultural. The Southern economy centered on plantations and the use of enslaved African laborers. The Northern economy, on the other hand, featured growing commercial and industrial sectors in addition to agriculture. These differences caused economic and ideological friction between the North and the South. Disputes over states' rights emerged as questions arose about the morality and legality of slavery in the United States territory. And then pointing out our cause and effect in our text box there, letter A, note the author's use of cause and effect. Signal words and phrases such as on the other hand. Again, we keep going back to that idea of signal words and looking for them. And in our language arts lesson today, we're going to see that as well again. So look for that, right? That contrast. Anything like on the other hand, it's going to start switching gears for you. And then the next one says, the author directly states that one event caused the other. So the differences that was caused by economic and ideological friction between the North and the South, created disputes, right? That was the cause. Economic and ideological friction caused disputes over states' rights that emerged. So, this is setting up what we've been discussing between the North and the South, and even going back to like the Federalist and the Democratic Republicans, which were kind of split between those lines, between the North and the South, right? There's more Democratic Republicans in the South that favored states' rights, and it all sort of rolled into one, sort of big idea. The states' rights went hand in hand with their idea about slavery, and on top of that, their idea of agriculture that was going to be, human labor and not industrialized. Okay, so let's go on to the quiz. Right. So open up your lesson 6, unit 2 quiz. Give everybody just a second here. Oh, in our little text box here, other signal words and phrases including caused, affected, led to, and resulted from to confirm a cause and effect relationship. Restate the events as A caused B. So, if you see something relate to that, affected, led to, right? You could just simply insert caused, and that gives you your direct cause and effect statement. So always consider that, if you're trying to summarize something or you're trying to remember some details, put it in your own words, and think about it as you're reviewing that in your head. That makes it a lot easier. Okay, let's start at the top. Etta, would you like to read the question number 1 for us and answer it?
Sure.
All right.
All right. It says, during the era of the American Revolution, northern and southern states were united behind the common goal of gaining independence from Britain. However, as time went by, differences between the two regions grew pronounced. With the beginning of the 1800s, the South remained primarily agricultural. The Southern economy, can't get it out, centered on plantations and the use of enslaved African laborers. The Northern economy, on the other hand, featured growing commercials and industrial sectors in addition to agriculture. These differences caused economic and ideological friction between the North and the South. Disputes over states' rights emerged as questions arose about the mortality and legality of slavery in the United States territories. And the question reads, what is one effect of the regional differences that emerged between the North and the South in the early to mid 1800s? Is it A, the northern states strongly supported states' rights? B, the South began using the labor of enslaved people? C, the northern economy became increasingly diverse? Or D, northern farmers began establishing plantations? If I had to guess, I think it would be A.
C. C is in cat. Now, so that it would be reversed. It was the southern states that wanted to support states' rights over central government, federal government. B almost sounds right because it says began using slave labor, but we know they it wasn't just beginning; they had been doing it. So C then leaves you with that diversity in the northern economy. It was industrializing faster than the southern states. And just more shipping and things like that, and it worried the southern states because of the level of competition that was growing, and the industrialization of the North also meant that they were now making machinery that could do the jobs of human labor on in agriculture. Right, we're getting more mechanization in that field, so it take less human labor. But for them, they had this super cheap, free labor basically, that was doing the job for them. So they didn't need a big investment in machinery or anything. So they were threatened by that idea of northern industry and economic activity. All right, so C for number one. And let's see here. Amina, would you like to do the speech here? Alexander Stevens' cornerstone speech? Maybe not. Okay, how about Christiana? Would you like to read the speech for us?
Okay.
Okay.
Number 2.
Yeah, it starts off number 2.
Okay, so fill in the blanks. Many people still debate why Americans fought the Civil War. Some historians claim the war was about states' rights, whilst others believe the war was fought over slavery. However, no confusion existed when the South fired on the North's first summer.
That's abbreviation for fort. It's Fort Sumter.
Okay, so Fort Sumter in 1861. The vice president of the is it please the word?
Was that Cornerstone? Is that
the vice president of the
Confederacy?
Okay, Confederate. Okay, so Confederate states Alexander Stevens gave his famous cornerstone speech in March 1861, shortly before the war started. The new constitution has put at rest forever all the agitating questions relating to peculiar institution of African slavery as it exists among us, the proper status of the Negro of the Negro in our form of civilization. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. Jefferson, in his forecast, has anticipated this as the rock upon which the old Union would split. He was right. What was conjecture with him is now a reality. Realized fact. But whether he fully comprehend the great truth upon which that rock stood and stands may be doubt. The prevailing idea entertained by him and most of the leading statesmen at the time of the formation of the old constitution were at the enslavement of the African was in violation. violation of the laws of nature. That that at that sorry, at it was wrong in principle, socially, morally, and politically. It was an evil. It was an evil they knew not well how to deal with. But the general opinion of the men, the general opinion of the men of that day was that somehow or other, in the order of providence, providence, somehow or other in the order of providence, the institution would be ever, the institution will be ever, please the word,
Evanescent.
evanesced and passed away. This idea, though not incorporated in the incorporated in the Constitution, was the prevailing idea at that time. The Constitution, is it true, secured every essential guarantee to the institution whilst it should last, and hence no argument can be justly argued,
Urged.
urged against the constitutional guarantees are secure because of the common sentiment of the day, Though those ideas, however, were fundamentally wrong. They rest upon the assumption of the inequality of race. This was an error. It was a steady information, it was a standy. It was a sandy foundation, and the government built upon it, fail when the storm came and the wind blew. Our new government is found upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundation and let its cornerstone rest upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. That slavery and please the word
Subordination.
Subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. This our new government is the first in the history of the world, based on his great physiological and moral truth. This truth has been slow in the process of its development, like all other truth in the various departments of science. It has been so even among us.
So before we get to the question, I just want to point out, we're still having this debate for some reason. There's a lot of people out there that want to make this argument about why the Confederacy, why those Southern states seceded from the United States, why they fought in the war. And a lot of times they point to states' rights, right? Well, the state's rights to do what? There is not a historian worth their weight that is going to say anything else than this war was about slavery. And here is perfect evidence coming from the vice president, right? From Alexander Stephens, vice president of the Confederacy, telling everybody exactly what it's about, right? He's telling everybody it is about white supremacy. It is about this maintaining, the white race over the black race. White man, that slavery. Oh, not there. Slavery, subordination to the superior race is his natural and normal condition. So any argument other than the fact that this was about slavery is just bull. It's just not true. And it's documented, right? This is a prime piece of evidence for that. There's no conjecture, there's no opinion. It's right there being spoken by one of the political leaders in the Confederacy. So just want to point that out. Like I said, we're still talking about it for some reason when there's plenty of evidence that points otherwise. So Christiane, you want to go ahead and finish off here and answer the question for us?
Okay. And the question says, to what did President Thomas Jefferson refer as the rock upon which the old Union would split? I think he had an anticipated, I don't really know.
Okay, it's slavery, right? So it's always alluded to here, but it says Jefferson in his forecast had anticipated this as the rock upon which the Union would split. And then up here it mentions the peculiar institution of African slavery. Oddly enough, Jefferson himself, a slave owner, but they saw this brewing for a long time, right? Even as early as the days when Jefferson was president, when he was third president of the United States, they could see this already, that it was going to be an issue at some point. And that's something else that that passage points out. So yeah, slavery for number 2, Slavery. Okay. And let's see, Grace, you want to answer number 3 for us? It's the same passage, so we'll just fill in the blank here. Maybe.
To the new government.
Yeah. You got number 3?
Yeah, it's the same passage.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's the same passage. Oh.
Yeah, it's the same passage. Yeah, so you can
Did
just
you say I should read?
What was
Did you say
that?
I should read? Did you say I should read?
No, just read the question. If you could answer the question for us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The question. Yeah. Stevens claims that Jefferson and other American forefathers believed slavery would cease to exist due to the order of.
So it's up here in the.
No idea.
Yeah, this is one that you would have to probably search for. If you came across that in a test or something. So it's right here, somehow or other.
Order of Providence.
Providence, yeah, and that's it has a couple of different definitions, but it's largely like sort of it's the will of God type of idea, or sort of like something that's going to occur in the future. And I think that's more the definition they're going for here. If you take the context that somehow or other in the order of planning for the future, you could kind of insert it there. So yeah, number 3, providence, Providence. Okay. And number 4, same passage again. So let's see, Sashige, would you like to read question 4 for us?
Okay. The blank, according to Stevens, guarantees that slavery will continue to exist. I'd have to read the passage again.
Okay, we'll see if we can
Is it
find
government?
it. You're close. So right here, it says this idea, though not incorporated in the Constitution, was the prevailing idea at the time. The Constitution, it is true, secured every essential guarantee to the institution, right? When they say institution, right, they're always talking about slavery. So he's saying right there, the Constitution, it is true, secured every essential guarantee to the institution while it should last. And hence no argument can be justly urged against the constitutional guarantees thus secured because of the common sentiment of the day. Okay, how ironic it is that they're pointing to the Bill of Rights, which is supposed to guarantee all these freedoms for everybody, that the Constitution is supposed to protect the institution of slavery. These people are out of their minds, I tell you. So Constitution, Constitution. All right, number 4, Constitution. And let's see, number 5 is the same passage. Let's see, Christiana, you want to try this one again? Number 5. How about Grace? Go ahead. Why don't you try number 5?
Okay.
Okay.
The institution of slavery claims Stevens is a natural and normal condition because the white and the African races are not equal.
There you go. Right. That's the whole basis of his argument, is that the white race is supposed to be superior to I mean, technically all races to them. But in this case, since we're talking about African slavery, they're talking about African Americans or the enslaved population there. So not equal for number 5. Okay. And that's the last one for the quiz. Let's see here. Go ahead and check our answers real quick before we move on. So, yep, 1 is C, as in cat. There it is. Northern economy became increasingly diverse. 2, slavery, Slavery. 3 is providence. Providence. 4 was constitution, Constitution. And 5, not equal, 2 words there, Notequual. All right.
Number four, please.
Number four was the Constitution. Constitution. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Number 3. 3.
Oh, number 3, Providence. Providence. Okay. All right, we'll slide over to the workbook now. Not a whole lot of questions. I think there's only 10 on the workbook for this one. Okay, and again, tell us about understanding causes and effects, examining how historical events relate to one another, right? This is really what this lesson is really wrapped around, right? And we're also, if you noticed, we've moved into more of the Civil War era. We were sort of in that antebellum period, which is before the war, and we dealt with the War of 1812 last week. So now we're looking at the reasons, the causes, and the effects of the separation of the states into the Southern Rebellion. I'm gonna go ahead and read this little passage since we have a little map here, and then I'll hand it back over to you guys to do some of the questions for us. Okay, so it says, by refining the skill of understanding causes and effects, you will improve your study and test taking abilities, especially as they relate to the GED social studies test. So here you have a little map, study the map and passage below, then answer the questions that follow. And remember when I mentioned brackets before, when you see a bracket like that around like an O or a date, the author is telling you that that is what was most likely there. So if you have like an old document or something where the ink smudged, there might be a missing letter here or there, and the brackets are basically the author themselves inserting something to make it more clear. So it says here, on December 20th, 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union and called on other Southern states to do likewise. Though Lincoln was not yet in office, his actions and opinions were influential. He received numerous letters about the secession crisis, asking for his position and offering advice. Within 40 days, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas followed South Carolina's lead. They established the Confederate States of America and inaugurated Jefferson Davis of Mississippi as their president, all before Lincoln took office. On March 4th, 1861, Lincoln delivered his inaugural address to a divided Union. So yeah, keep that in mind. Those states split from the Union basically after Lincoln was elected, in between the time he was elected and the time he actually took office. So looking at our map, and of course it says over here in our one text box that a visual map or a visual such as a map may help to clarify causes and effects. And B, then it says, notice where the people who voted for Lincoln lived, where did most of his opponents live? And, real straightforward, right? When we're thinking about the Civil War and the two sides that fought in the Civil War, your sort of reddish color there for the Republican and the winner. So the states, we already had Oregon and California were already admitted to the Union. And then all these upper northern states voted for Lincoln. And then the lighter shade of blue, right, is your Southern Democrats that voted for Breckinridge. And then there was a few that voted for the Northern Democrat Douglas. I think that was, one state, Missouri, basically, I think it was Stephen A. Douglas. They voted for him. But you can already see before the Southern states seceded where that split's going to be, right? Based on who voted and who won that 1860 presidential election. You can see it starting there. All right, so we'll go ahead and start the workbook. Yeah, I think my internet is slow today. It's taking things a while. All right, and it's the same passage there discussing Lincoln being elected and then the secession of those, a number of the southern states, then a few more follow on afterward. And then here it says sometimes a sequence of events suggests a cause. So you can ask yourself these questions like, what happened first? What happened next? How are these two events related? So you can sort of make an outline in your mind, or a timeline in your mind to see how things transpired. So in this case, of course, for our presidential election of 1860, it's like, okay, that was, basically the straw that broke the camel's back when it came to the secession of the southern states. Lincoln, being a Republican, they knew what he stood for on slavery. They knew what the northern states stood for on slavery. They knew that they were not going to have a shot to continue the institution of slavery under the Lincoln administration. So that's one big reason why they decided to leave. Okay. And let's go with Etta. Would you like to read the question for us here? Question 1.
Okay, you said the question. So what caused the southern states to succeed from the Union?
Yeah.
A, Davis election. B, Lincoln's election. C, votes from the territories. Or D, establishments of the Confederacy. Is it B?
Yeah, B, right? Lincoln's election. Of course, they hadn't actually established the Confederacy yet. Excuse me, the territories didn't have votes they didn't have any electoral votes or anything at that time. And of course, Davis was elected as the Confederate president. So that would have been down the road, right? That would have been another cause and effect once they separated from the US and they had their own election and they elected Jefferson Davis as president. So B as in boy for number 1. Okay. Once again, our same passage here and same map. So let's see here. Let's go with Grace. You want to take this one? Number 2.
Okay. Number 2. What was one effect? Okay. What was one effect of the South secession? Yeah. A divided nation. B, Lincoln resigned from office. C, territories were made, and D, Oregon joined the Confederacy. I think the answer is A.
Yeah, it's a divided nation at that point, right? It's no longer one nation at all. Yeah, everything else, of course, Lincoln didn't resign from office. He was assassinated. Territories would be made states later. And of course, Oregon stayed a Union state. And of course, you could tell that because they voted for Lincoln. You could see there are three electoral votes there. All right. So yeah, 2 is A. And let's see. All right. Yeah. So a new passage here. Latoya, you want to take this passage?
Oh, hold on. Stop. This thing is barking at me. The inventions of the cotton gin in 1793 dramatically changed the cotton industry in the United States. The gin separated cotton fibers from the seeds, reducing the amount of labor needed for the production process. Cotton was now a much more profitable business in the southern states. Cotton became a major cash crop. Hold on, I left my glasses upstairs.
Oh.
Production of raw cotton in the United States increased from just over 3,000 bales in 1790 to almost 4. Hold on, it's getting blurry.
4 million.
4 million bales in by 1860. Other cash crops such as rice and tobacco were also important to the economy of the South. The plantations of southern states needed inexpensive sources of labor to work the fields of cotton and other cash crops.
Yep. Thanks. And so, yeah, then we have our little table down here to show the population. So, the cotton gin was one of those inventions that made it a lot easier to separate like the seeds in the cotton plant and just get the raw cotton fibers. And cotton was a hugely desirable textile at that time. Well, it still is, right? I mean, my t-shirt's cotton. We wear, cotton all the time. It was a durable, lightweight, breathable material. And for the time, that was you started seeing more and more clothes produced by that. So, and they were exporting it like crazy. So we see here, the sort of the result of that. Once the cotton gin comes online, right before it, 1790, you had, just in the state of South Carolina is what we're dealing with here, 140,178 white people. And you actually had a smaller population of slaves at that time. You had less slaves in the state than you did white Southerners. 1820, that already changes, right? So about 30 years after the invention of the cotton gin, the cotton industry, right? The king cotton was the term that the South used. This was their huge cash crop. No, tobacco was also a big one. You had some sugar and rice, things like that, but so much of their output and their cash came from cotton. And then you can see by 1840, you have almost 100,000 more enslaved people than you do white people. And by 1860, you see that number is crazy. So the amount of slave labor that was being pumped into South Carolina's economy to work the fields and largely in cotton, but basically any agricultural activity they would be involved with on a plantation where you had people with the cash to own slaves and buy slaves. So it was just, it all rolls into that whole thing. So by 1860, right, that's right when the South is considering is like we're in jeopardy of losing our free workforce, our slave workforce, under a presidency of Abraham Lincoln. You see it's just to them dollar signs. That's all they're looking at here. Is the economic jeopardy that a Lincoln presidency could put them in. So right there, 1860, 291,300 whites, almost doubled, or you're getting there, over 200,000 more African slaves in the state. So you could see the importance of slavery to that Southern economy. And so Christiana, would you like to read question 3 for us?
Okay. So number 4.
Number 3.
From the number 3.
Yeah.
Which of the following would have most likely caused an increase in the enslaved African American population in South Carolina? A.
Fugitive.
Come again.
Fugitive.
Okay, new fugitive slave laws were passed in 1850, making it harder for enslaved Americans to escape. B. Many more enslaved people were brought to South Carolina from Africa during this period. C. Enslaved Americans were needed to work the fields of large southern plantations. D. Many slaves escaped to the north along the routes of the Underground Railroad. I think it's B.
It's C for number 3. Right, because of the increased production of cotton and how much they required to work fields. That's what's driving the enslaved population to increase over that time. There were earlier there was fugitive slave laws where there were northern states that would return slaves. The closer we get to the Civil War, the less anybody is enforcing those laws in the North. It's true, more enslaved people were brought to South Carolina from Africa during that period, but that doesn't really answer the question as far as what caused the increase, right? So we needed that production. The Southerners needed the slave labor because they were unwilling to really industrialize and find new methods. And of course, it was free labor. They didn't have to pay anybody to work fields under slavery. So C is in cat for number 3.
Okay.
All right. Sasha Gay, would you like to read the Emancipation Proclamation for us on number 4?
Okay. From the Emancipation Proclamation issued by Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. That on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any effort they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will, on the first day of January, aforesaid, designate the states and parts of the states in which the people hereof respectively shall then be in rebellion against the United States, and the fact that any state or the people thereof shall on that day be in good faith represented by the Congress of the United States by members chosen thereto at elections wherein a majority of the qualified voters of such state have participated shall be deemed conclusive evidence that such state and the people thereof are not then in rebellion against the United States. Question: How did the Emancipation Proclamation affect enslaved people in the United States and the Confederacy? A, it offered them the opportunity to earn their freedom by serving in the US military. B, it freed enslaved people living in southern states fighting against the Union. C, enslaved African Americans were needed to work the fields of large southern plantations. D, many slaves escaped the North along the routes of the Underground Railroad. Is it C?
C, enslaved African Americans were needed to work the fields of large plantations. This one kind of bothers me. It's actually what they have here is A. It offered them the opportunity to earn their freedom by serving in the U.S. military. The problem with that, and it's got to be the correct answer. So make sure you mark A. B is really what the answer should be, right? It freed enslaved people living in southern states fighting against the Union. None of these really are worded in a way that really represents what the Emancipation Proclamation did. The Emancipation Proclamation, right? It was an executive order. We hear about executive orders all the time. Joe Biden signed executive orders. Donald Trump signed executive orders. It was a presidential proclamation and an executive order that freed. It changed the status. Really, is basically how it's worded. It changed the status of African slaves being held in only the states that were in rebellion, which is also an important piece.